Happy holidays from the Signal Watch. This year, we're watching movies that are Christmas films, but which fall into at least one other genre. We're looking for films that mix up a bit of the spirit of the season with horror, sci-fi, or whatever our co-contributors brought to the table. So, get out the eggnog and join us for some holiday fun as we talk a few Christmas movies. Stay merry. We're gonna try to make this work. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch and happy holidays. I think this is going to be our final Christmas episode of the season, so, and it's not even staying on theme.
Well, kind of.
I mean, sort of. The theme this year was movies that were genre-bending.
It's noir.
Well, yeah, for that theme, if we're tucking it into that playlist, I guess. But it's not with everything else that we've done this Christmas.
Right.
So, anyway, what did we do, Jamie?
We did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from 2005, written and directed by Shane Black.
Right. So it's Shane Black, so it automatically is a Christmas movie. And you'd been suggesting for a little bit that we watch this movie. Everyone has been suggesting to me that I watch this movie for a while.
I can't believe we've never seen it before. Like, after watching it, it seems like it was right up your alley. It hit everything for me. I thought it was highly enjoyable.
Yeah. So Simon had even given me the DVD of this at some point, and it had just been kind of collecting dust on the shelf. And ironically, we watched it last night, but in the afternoon when we were doing some tidying for Christmas decorating, I had thrown the DVD into a pile of DVDs underneath. And it had been sitting up there for like at least 9 months.
Yeah, if it was next to the TV,
yeah. And of course, and that's always the way it is. And anyway, but we had to go back and dig it out then of that pile of DVDs.
We found it.
So anyway, we did watch it at long last, and yeah, I mean, it as far as like fitting the like noir detective sort of stuff that I like to read. At least I don't watch as many movies, I think, as
guy who finds himself in an unwinnable situation, stumbles backward into this mess.
Yeah, I mean, so in 2005 when this came out, for various reasons, we were kind of wrapping up our time in Phoenix, and we just weren't going to see many movies.
Yeah. I remember seeing the trailer for it and thinking it looked interesting, but after that, I hadn't heard about it in years, till recently.
So do you know what got you wanting to watch it? Because you started bringing it up a few weeks ago.
Oh, just the past couple of years, like around Christmas time. You know, Simon's been over. It's like, oh, you should watch that. And we're always looking for Christmas movies. We're always looking for new Christmas movies that I've not seen before that aren't like Elf or Christmas Vacation, you know? And this is not like... I don't think this falls into the category this year because it's really not a Christmas movie. It's just one that happens to take place. It's like more of a Christmas. It would have fit better last year.
Yeah, it incidentally takes place.
It's a Christmas adjacent movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it takes place mostly in LA, which, as all Chandler-esque stuff kind of does, or. And, it definitely has the, like, what are the rich people, like, secretly up to? What crimes are they perpetrating?
This movie is bananas, by the way.
Talk about that.
Rich people crimes are, like... So, I cannot, like, recount the actual plot of this movie very well. But just some of the stuff that happens... well, and of course, a lot of it harkens to the Chandler books, like The Lady in the Lake, and even like some of the titles, for the different segments of the movie are taken from Chandler books.
Yeah.
And I think the last one you said, I don't recognize this, but it might have been a short story.
Yeah, I've read all the novels, but I've not gotten into the short stories yet. So.
Yeah, but then like the whole taking place in LA, like the parties are just, this is how crazy rich people live, and I'm sure a lot of that's accurate. I mean, it's written by Shane Black. Like the first party was filmed at his house.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure he's had these parties before. But then, like, he gets his finger cut off for, like, the most mundane reason. Like, not anything, like, menacing, but, his lady love... she's more of a partner in this. She is a love interest, but she has a lot to do. I mean, he's, like, arguing with her, and she, like, slams his door, she slams his finger in the door, and it just falls off, like... And then later on in the movie, like... he has it on ice. This is after they've sewn it on, and it gets cut off again, and then a dog in a house, like, just picks it up out of the ice and eats it. Like, that is a plot point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, so, I mean, probably the most famous adaptation of a Chandler book to movie is The Big Sleep. And what you always hear people saying with The Big Sleep is, I couldn't follow it, but I loved it.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty typical. Like, if you ask me, like, what is The Little Sister about? Or what is Lady in the Lake? Lady in the Lake, I probably have my head around the most of the Chandler novels. Mm-hmm. But it's not without its twists and turns. But they're just kind of that way. And this is definitely trying to emulate that. Interestingly, so... there's this series of detective books that keeps getting referenced in the film. Mm-hmm. What were they called? They were called like Mike Gossamer or something.
No, I think it was like Jake something or John something.
Yeah. But those were... Yeah, I mean, there's a million detective series out there. And of course Chandler has Philip Marlowe. But yeah, I mean, the covers all look like they were painted by Robert McGuire, who's kind of a famous dime store novelist, artist. Wait, am I getting that? Is it McGinnis or McGuire? Anyway, it doesn't matter. You guys don't know.
I don't know.
So anyway, they managed to go get this, at least reuse some of his work for that. Oh, the Mike Shane mysteries is what I was thinking of. Is they're definitely replicating the covers of those.
Okay.
And there was a whole bunch of those, but of course those are kind of a ripoff of Mike Hammer books, and it just kind of goes on and on of people doing these detectives. Kind of leading all the way back, I think, to kind of the Continental Op from Hammett, and probably there were other people in the 20s and teens who were doing that as well. But it really, really feels like one of the things that's really interesting to me about Big Lebowski is essentially a noir. I mean, I don't know if people really think of it that way. The joke there is he's just being propelled through this whole thing and has no idea what's going on through the whole thing, and then the mystery just kind of resolves itself, and he really didn't, he just happened to be an observer, versus this one where he decides he's brought out there by accident as an actor.
Well, as an actor, I mean, he starts off the movie he's like robbing stores, and he's getting chased by the cops, and stumbles into an audition and nails it because he has just watched his friend get shot. And that is, I mean, of course, it works well with the plot. Like, that's how you write the script, is like, that is the plot of what is happening in this audition. And so he nails it. Like, he's feeling very fragile. And
by he, we mean Robert Downey Jr.
Sorry, yes. Whose name in the movie is Harry.
Lockhart.
Harry Lockhart. So yeah, I mean, he even gets out to LA in just like this crazy manner.
Where he's assigned for his big screen test audition that he's going to have to Val Kilmer, who is playing a very wealthy private eye in Los Angeles named Perry. And Perry's going to kind of, show him the ropes a little bit, so he has more of a reference point for what being a private eye is. So he's going to kind of shadow him for 24 hours or so.
Yeah.
And they keep kind of talking about how things work in these novels of like, oh, there's always like two cases that end up intersecting. And, you shoot exactly 16 guys, and I'm pretty sure that was the body count at the end of this movie.
I was trying to count, but then I lost track.
But in getting to LA, he stumbles across a young woman, or woman who's exactly his age in the context of the film.
Well, I mean, it's funny. It's like he's older than they're supposed to be. She's younger than they're supposed to be. So they kind of had to meet in the middle. Yeah. But it's not that big of a deal. They're only like 10 years apart. But I mean, Robert Downey Jr. looks good for his age here. So
yeah,
it's viable.
Yeah, and so she was a girl who he'd known in high school who broke his heart over and over. They were like, he was the friend to the girl who was.
She kept sleeping with all the dudes.
Yeah, and she'd never sleep with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got kind of this really kind of goofy setup. But anyway, her sister has come out to LA, and you find out initially they think she's killed herself, and then they figure out, oh no, that was the sister.
Her sister stole
her purse,
all of her IDs and stuff.
So yeah, it's a windy, twisty murder mystery where two different cases end up intersecting, and but it's got this really solid cast. It's got Val Kilmer in really right at the end of his film career. Val Kilmer, if you don't know, I read an article recently. He's actually fairly ill. And his voice is all messed up, and he doesn't look super good because of the medicines and things he's on. And he's basically running an art gallery, I think, in like Santa Fe. I think that's what he's currently doing. But you're reminded like what a solid actor he was.
He's so great, and I hadn't seen him in years in anything. And honestly, he picked some not interesting, but like not my favorite movies to be in. I know he was in that Western. Was it Tombstone?
Oh, you just disappointed like every dude.
Oh.
Yes, it was Tombstone. He put Doc Holliday. Actually,
I was thinking of a different Western. I actually like Tombstone.
Everyone likes Tombstone.
Okay. But I don't think... And he was in Batman and all that, I haven't really seen him in anything that I felt he was, challenged or asked to do a lot of great acting in. And I thought he was fantastic here. And he really works well off of Robert Downey Jr. I mean, who doesn't? But they really clicked.
Yeah, this is a pre-Iron Man Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, in fact, I think this movie went a long way to getting him that role.
Yeah, it's interesting in that when you think about like the career point both of them were at, like Kilmer Kilmer had been having like trouble in Hollywood for years because he's apparently just was super difficult.
I've heard that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was like a method actor. So like in Ghost in the Darkness, he would only be spoken to as if he were his character.
Okay, that's obnoxious.
Yeah, so he was like driving people crazy. So they're like trying to get stuff done, and he's like, "No, you don't understand. I'm a lion hunter out here in the bush." Which I don't want to make too much fun of it. You get to your process how you get to your process, but Downey Jr. at this point, it was coming off of being kind of infamous for some really horrendous behavior.
He had a really rough patch, and in fact, they kind of reference one incident when he broke into, like, he was out of his mind, but he broke into some woman's house, and there's a scene early on when they're doing a backstory of let's stop calling her the girl. Harmony's her character's name, but it's Michelle Monaghan, who this is one of the biggest movies she's ever been in. She's been in a lot of stuff, but
yeah, she was in True Detective season 1. She was excellent in that, and that's the only other thing I'd really seen her in.
Yeah, but anyway, so her character gets broken into by this struggling actor, and then he falls off of her balcony. And I mean, the second I saw that, I was like, "Oh, that's what they're talking about." Yeah. And I don't know if like Shane Black wrote that in, or if that was Robert Downey Jr.'s idea, or what.
I'm sure Shane Black did it, and it was probably a conversation they had to have because it's this totally goofy thing of they keep referencing kind of like it's very baked into Hollywood, which by the way Chandler did in his novels after he started getting adapted. Like some of the stuff took place like in Hollywood, and very clearly people are like analogs for real actors in him imagining as if any of these actresses would have ever wanted to sleep with Raymond Chandler. And if you've ever seen pictures of Raymond Chandler, he was not going to be scoring with the best women in Hollywood. But yeah, he it's got there's this like RoboCop character that there's a toy of he's trying to steal to sell to his nephew, and that character's no longer cool, and that plays into that scene then. Like,
she's actually watching like a TV show based on that character, and then she hears a noise, and it's a guy dressed in the robot suit. Yeah. It's just bonkers.
Yeah. I mean, it's just got a lot of really good, I mean, I've never lived in LA. I'm not part of the Hollywood scene, but it's got lots of good gags of like where you kind of end up as an actor when you go out there. One of the running gags is she was in like one beer commercial at some point.
Yeah, with like a bear.
Yeah, with a cartoon bear.
Yeah, and they actually show it a couple times. But yeah, I mean, it's a smart script. It's got a structure where Robert Downey Jr.'s narrating, which is
classic
very common with detective stuff. But it's got a Downey Jr. flair to it, and I'm sure part of it was written in like that, and I'm sure he was allowed to ad-lib, a little bit. But a lot of it, I think if it had been anyone else, it would have had a hard time working. I don't know. He made it work.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. So, I mean, you have a few different angles you could have gone at this with. You could have gone with, we're going to try and get, like, I can't even think of a specific actor, but, straight dramatic actor to try and do this.
Yeah.
Even Val Kilmer, had he been narrating it as that character, not as Perry, but as if they'd cast him as Harry, I don't think it would have been as funny. But if you try to get a comedian in there, I'm trying to think in 2005 who that would have been.
Maybe Jim Carrey at the time. He was doing like interesting things back then. Yeah.
It just would not have. It would have been too slapsticky. Mm-hmm. It's the buyable I'm a bit of a fuck up, you know.
That's why he worked so well as Tony Stark. I mean...
Yeah. And so, yeah, he's no one in this movie, aside from Perry, Val Kilmer, is competent. Like, including the criminals.
No. But then, there's an amazing, last third where it feels like he's just at his wit's end. With all the finger stuff, and just, he's been awake for it. He's been on Demerol. He's been drunk 3 times. I mean, he's just had it. And he starts just killing people with, laser accuracy. and part of that is suspension of disbelief. But there's something about the expression on his face that's he's going to nail all of these guys.
Yeah, and it helps that they've set it up with this, because both he and Harmony have been talking about this character and how he just goes through and mows everybody down. So you kind of know it's coming at that point in the movie.
Yeah.
Which the movie acknowledges over and over of oh yeah, I know this seems like a movie thing to have, because he's narrating it and he's like, oh, I know this seems like a thing that happens in a movie, but I swear this is actually what happened.
I think it also helps that throughout the entire movie, he and Val Kilmer have been, all of them have been screwing up, doing everything wrong. So then finally, when it comes to, this moment where he's just, I've had it, now I'm going to be competent.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of luck, too. He falls in the right place, falls on top of someone's car instead of on the road. It's just...
Yeah. The villain in the movie is Corbin Burnson,
right?
Who just very, very well cast, but it also makes it possible. There's a movie of this detective that was supposed to have been shot in their small town in Indiana when they were growing up, and they're starring Michael Beck as this character, and they're like, who is Michael Beck? And he goes, and Perry's like, oh, that's the guy from Xanadu with Gene Kelly.
Yes.
And it's this, and we just, of course, watched Xanadu back in March. It's oh my god, that's absolutely right. So they're able to use some movie, and I haven't looked it up.
I don't know what it is.
What the movie was that apparently Corbin Burnson and Michael Beck did together. It looks like a TV movie.
Yeah, it does.
So they actually have this crazy footage from back in the early 80s that they're able to use for this movie. So yeah, it's Burnson's really good, full stop. But in this, whenever they give him a chance to kind of play the rich white guy who's secretly evil, which he's done a couple of times at this point, he really nails it. He's very solid.
I mean, and it doesn't ruin anything that in the very first scene where you meet him, you're like, oh, this guy's not right.
Yeah. Larry Miller also appears briefly in the film. I'm trying to think of anyone else who's in it.
Let me just take a glance here. I'm really not seeing anyone else that I recognize. But no, the cast is really good. And then there's just some truly just bizarre moments. He ends up peeing on the corpse accidentally. I mean, there's a scene where a spider crawls into Michelle Monaghan's bra and he ends up slapping it. And I'm making it sound like I'm trying to think of some gross 80s comedy or something, but it's not like that. It's not played like that at all.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty smart. I think it's very, very smart, honestly. And it's got a lot of love for those style detective stories. It's got a lot of love for... it knows it well enough that it can riff on it and do its own thing, which is a really, really tight rope.
No, I totally agree. And I've seen a number of, just because you've watched them, modern noir movies that I don't think work very well. But this one takes a lot of risks, and it works. Mm-hmm. In fact, like I wouldn't mind watching this, over again. Not this year, but Christmas time. Because now that I know what happens in it, I feel like there's a lot of things that I missed and that I want to go back and try to pick up on.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the joys of kind of these, kind of detective stories is you definitely, the first time you're reading them or watching them, you're just unpacking along with the detective. And that's all you really have time to do. And even in Knives Out, which we just watched. The kind of joy of, like, if you already know how it ends and seeing all the pieces dovetail together, and you get just a much richer experience kind of on that second viewing. Yeah. Second, third, fourth, whatever.
And I think the people that make modern noirs sometimes mistake them for, this has to be morose. It has to be super serious and dark. Mm-hmm. And I think with Knives Out and with this movie, there's just a joy in it. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, there's some horrible things happening in this, but I'm having a really good time.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, there's an adaptation of a Chandler book called Murder My Sweets. I'm trying to remember, is it Farewell My Lovely? I can't remember, because one is the book and one is the movie. But it's a Dick Powell movie, and where he plays Marlowe. And it's a freaking joy to watch. I mean, horrible things are happening, but that's kind of the point of Philip Marlowe kind of always being snarky and kind of upbeat, and and that's kind of how the books are really until you get to The Long Goodbye, which has been adapted, I think, by Altman. We covered that a few years ago, and that one kind of earns the, like, kind of, it's depressing. Mm-hmm. There's no getting around that. And
I watched that with you. Yeah, it's good, but I know what you mean.
But like when you're watching like the Dick Powell movie, it's he's not having a good time, but he's wisecracking kind of his way through as the defense mechanism. So it keeps everything kind of elevated at a certain level. In the books, that's generally true for about the first 2/3. And then in the back third is always when things start getting like really serious.
Yeah.
When that has to fall away for various reasons. This doesn't necessarily do that because this is an action comedy. They're full stop. Like,
I mean, there are parts where, Robert Downey Jr. really gets to show his range because, he's not just wisecracking. Like, some horrible shit's happening to him, mm-hmm. and you can see it in his face. Like, he's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, when he actually has to shoot somebody the first time, they actually have him have a human reaction to having had done that. I mean, it doesn't last that long, but because it's a short, movie's only so long, but it's not. They don't just take it casually. Like a Star Wars movie takes murder very casually.
Exactly. Well, and I also like that it's not just Robert Downey Jr. that's allowed to be funny in this. Like, Val Kilmer has some brilliant moments. And even Michelle Monaghan has just some...
Oh, she's hysterical.
Her character is just... She's just not right. Like, her instincts are so bizarre.
So, one of the things the movie is about is, they talk about, you can tell it's Shane Black editorializing through the movie of they grab America by the East Coast and shake it, and all the crazy girls end up in L.A.
Oh, that's literally a line in this. Yeah. It's hilarious. Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, I've not lived out there, but everything kind of trues up to kind of what you've heard about.
It makes sense. It takes a special kind of person to want to go and fight all that.
Or not just be naive, but egotistical enough to think you're going to go. I was
trying to put it nicely, but yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the two things that have to dovetail in order for that to work out. But yeah, and of course some people make it and some people don't. There's a reason a lot of actors flame out very brightly. But yeah, it's so she's supposed to be essentially one of those. That's why she's only ever been in a beer commercial. And,
a beer commercial.
Right. Man, I'm wondering if that was the origin of that joke.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, she makes extra money by appearing at parties, as like...
Right, she's a party hostess.
She's a party hostess, yeah. And in fact, like the last third of the movie, she's in this little, like, Santa costume, which works for Christmas. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not the best thing to be running around.
Right. Yeah, which, I mean, even the idea of having a paid party host does not exist outside of probably New York and LA.
No, and it's not the only thing. Like, they have those weird people in the cages.
Yeah, circus people.
That are, on display as part of the decoration.
Yeah, it's there and in Van Helsing. Those are the two movies I've seen recently. Decided that was...
Well, it makes sense here, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I'm glad I finally watched it. I think it's 2005. I can't remember exactly what was going on kind of in the cinema landscape. It was just before the Marvel movies started.
Just before that, it was right after the Lord of the Rings, all that business.
Yeah, there's a reference to Lord of the Rings in this.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, that's the name of one of the videotapes they're looking at.
Oh, yes. Not going to repeat it because it's filthy.
But it's also but it doesn't feel specifically tied down to 2005. But it's just interesting to kind of see kind of the forces that were at work. Like Shane Black, I feel like his career is always like one step forward, two steps back, one step forward, two steps back. Like he gets to write and direct his own movie. And then the movie is critically... Because this did well critically from my memory is.
The only thing that I read was that it did way better overseas than in the States. Like 70% of its profit came from overseas.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, and it premiered at... how do you say that? Cannes, yeah. And it got a standing ovation. Like, everyone was just losing their minds over it. And I don't know what time of year this came out here. If it's a Shane Black movie, but it doesn't have to be released at Christmas. I mean,
I think it was released in the fall, just from my own memory of it and kind of how we ended up missing it that year. But November 11th, 2005.
Okay, well, that explains why we did not go see it.
Jamie was having some medical issues around that time.
Yeah.
So we're not like being super mysterious about what was going on in our lives. It just kind of disappeared. It didn't get released to streaming till 2016. So that's part of how it probably disappeared.
Well, the budget wasn't very big on it either. So whatever profit they made,
Oh, the gross box office in the U.S. was apparently like $4.2 million. So yeah, it tanked.
Oh, wow. Well, it was made for $15 million.
Yeah.
So hopefully it didn't lose that much money.
Well,
probably broke even if that was the number here.
Yeah. Well, that's not considered a success.
I know, I'm aware.
But yeah, it's got an 87% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and an 86% tomato meter with the critics. So it was well liked, I guess, when by critics and audiences alike. It just didn't ever quite find its audience. I think honestly the title is terrible. I will be honest.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you anything about the film. It doesn't actually relate to the film.
Not at all. No, I honestly, when we started watching it, thought maybe that was one of the names of the books it was referencing, but no.
Yeah, it almost sounds like the name that they were using for it overseas and decided they were going to use that here too. Like, that is not... Sorry. It makes it sound like the movie is another, like, basically gun fu sort of movie.
Oh,
and it's not. That's not at all what it is. And it,
No, and I remember there being a lot of gunplay in the trailer, but there's really not that. We said he killed 16 people, but it's not... It doesn't feel like that.
No. It's much more of a straight detective sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to like over belabor it or give away too much, but I would definitely, we're basically doing this so one, I don't have to sit and actually write down a post about it. which I didn't want to have to do because I did want to talk about it, and you seemed to enjoy it last night.
Yeah, so. I really did.
But also, like, if I get an opportunity to kind of, promote a movie that I think kind of you should check out, I want to be able to do that. So,
and you can celebrate Christmas at the same time.
That's right, with murder. And this, by the way, this is going to be, I guess, our new Christmas podcast tradition. We're going to do a Christmas noir.
All right. So, yeah, we did one was Lady in the Lake last year?
Lady in the Lake was last year.
That seems like an eternity ago.
Yeah, that was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
It was long, long ago.
Woo.
But yeah, give it a shot. It's streaming on Amazon. I know that. And it is apparently available via Vudu and Fandango now. So, get out there and look for it. So, got anything else on this one, Jamie?
Nope.
Okay, cool. All right, y'all have a very happy holiday.
Happy holidays.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. You can drop comments on this podcast and let us know what you think. We do have a Signal Watch Patreon, and if you're so moved, we'd most certainly appreciate your support. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies. You've got to be kind.